Vanakkam, Namaste and blessings to everyone. This is Dr. Bhairavi Balasubramanian PhD, the Sky Priestess. The next few days are going to be very, very intense because Chiron is moving out of Pisces. So right now it's at 29 degrees Pisces, which is a very big deal. When any astrological body is at 29 degrees of any sign, it makes that body's energy very, very intense. It's almost like this big upswelling before it moves into a new energetic signature. And Chiron at 29 degrees Pisces is no exception, because 29 degrees Pisces is literally the last degree before we reset to 0 degrees Aries. This is a very big deal for all of us because Piscean energy is not just about our personal stories. It's also the stories that we carry in our ancestral currents that run through our genetic lineages. They are also the stories and the karmic patterns that we carry lifetime after lifetime, incarnation after incarnation. And so at this 29 degree Pisces point, we are bringing up and dredging up all karma that affects all of us in interlinking ways. Now, because all of us are unique expressions of spirit, we will feel this same energy in very, very different ways. Some of us may be feeling very, very aligned to spirit. Some of us may be feeling very sleepy, very tired, very fatigued, very overburdened, very stressed out. Some of us may be, ready and willing to do the deep diving to see the work that needs to be done. But it all depends on where you are and just what baggage you are carrying. Now let's talk about the baggage. Chiron itself is known as the wounded healer. And the wounded healer's role in mythology is to get wounded, so he finds healing, and then he teaches that healing to other people. I can't say I particularly like a lot of the archetypes in mythology because they're often about sacrificing the self in ways that in this current age no longer really align with the path. You see, a lot of them were written, or at least I think all of them, were written during the age of Pisces, or at the very least they reified and took on a new life in that age. And in the age of Pisces, spirituality and surrenderment, emptying yourself out like a hollow vessel to be filled by whatever divine source and spark there was, which in theory is still a good idea. It's just that right now we see that there's a lot of energy that may not be so divine. And so hollowing ourselves out is not a good idea. We've also come to the realization that escapism, trying to fly out of the body into another realm, is not exactly what the dharma of this age is. It is about learning how to be here and at the same time be a spiritual being. It is about learning that within ourselves, our connection to the earth, our connection to our innermost heart is our internal compass. This realization is something that is filtering into spiritual communities that once understood and the meaning of the word spiritual to be, not of this earth, but somewhere beyond. And we're seeing that it is really about deepening our connection to this three-dimensional reality and understanding how it in itself is already the multi-dimensional new earth that we keep talking about. So that's our big evolutionary step in understanding, which is happening. We are starting to realize that what we are looking for is right in front of us. It's always been there. And in fact, it's not even in front, it's right inside of us. And this is the big shift that Chiron in Aries, which will take place between February 17 to February 18, is going to make us realize. The healing is within, and it comes from truly embracing the authentic nature of the self. But to do that, there needs to be a lot of death. And when I say death, I'm not necessarily saying that you're going to die. What I mean to say is, your old ideas of who you are, of how you heal, of your relationship to wounds, to trauma, of the identity that you've built around carrying certain patterns in yourself or in your family line or from previous lifetime, that these patterns and identifications, labels and dynamics are the ones that need to be released. And where do they get released? Not to other people, not to the rest of the bloodline, but rather they need to be released back to source, to be dissolved. I prefer that word better. That dysfunctional patterns need to be dissolved and sent back to source energy. And this is what all of us are doing now in our own ways. Now, facilitators will have their own methods to do this. People who pray will have their own methods to do this. And it is best for you to stick to the method that works for you. This is not the time for you to be trying to, trying out something new or crazy or fancy. This is more a time for you to be processing in the way you know how, giving respect to the old world so that it can be released and its templates can be released, so we can actually start manifesting the new one. We are in some sense also celebrating that shift from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius, and we're still in the middle of navigating both ages. And we are also going to see that this shift from Chiron into Aries is also heralding. It's one of the markers that really say the old way of doing things and the old way of connecting with spirit and the old way of seeing spirit and matter as two different things do not work. And what I'm saying is not new. It's been said 1,000 times before. I just happen to be a vessel that some people like hearing it from, so I'm saying it. Now, what I would also go on to say is that at this time, if all of this just sounds too much for you, or if patterns are coming up left, right, and center from your relationships, your family, your environment, your past, your psychic site, whatever it is, you need to take care of yourselves. I feel that this is a time where we do need to be more proactive in pushing through those patterns, because sometimes the patterns just want to make us feel weak and disempowered when we are not, when this is part of the illusion that keeps us trapped as part of a matrix. And in some cases, pushing yourself is actually just going back on that same wheel of, I will suffer in order to do the spiritual thing. So you've really got to see where you stand on that. For some people, being proactive in the face of challenges is exactly what they need to do. And for some other people, actually allowing things to be will be the way forwards. And in some sense, the moment you allow a thing to be itself, paradoxically, that's when you can actually release your attachment to it. But that is a much deeper conversation. But effectively, different people are just going to handle this energy differently. There's no real hard and fast generalizable rule, except to say that you need to find the practice that helps you connect to your heart center. And in that space, you need to find a practice that allows you to release or dissolve, whichever word you prefer, old patterns and paradigms that you no longer want to perpetuate. Don't do it from anger. Don't do it from judgment. These emotions create further karmic hooks. Once you are simply allowing and saying, I no longer allow this pattern to have power over me in my life. And I know it sounds very simple, but believe me, it works. You actually create a space of new healing and new energy to come to you. And this is also very important for those of us who are working with, shall we say, different types of energies. Always ask your guides to mediate. Don't feel the need to do all of this by yourself. Call upon benevolent beings to help you lift what is or what has been created from the old templates and the old ways of being, and allow them to be dissolved so that new ways of being can actually come into and manifest in this reality. And we are seeing this manifest at the global level. The earth is basically saying, honey bunches, it is time to wake up. You can't be doing things the way you did them before. There needs to be a new script. And so that is what I am asking all of you, to allow yourselves to feel, to recognize, to move through. Like I said, for some of you, getting up, going at it, and pushing through these last 10 days is what you're going to need to do. For others, it's going to be stopping that pattern of, intensely striving, dying, suffering, just to go and do the right thing. And to say, I allow you to be what you are, and I allow you to leave. So you're going to have different variations in approach depending on who you are and what your story is. But I also want to say that this is a time where we do need to be more compassionate. Compassion doesn't mean tolerating injustice. It means that we are able to see people for who they are and their best qualities, even when the other person does not necessarily remember it. Sometimes you can help a person remember, and sometimes you can hold space for them to come back to themselves. Of course, in some cases, in extreme cases, compassion is literally saving someone from a dangerous situation and helping to get them out of it. But you've got to be very, very clear as to why, how, when are you doing what you're doing. You don't want to fall into another drama triangle. But effectively in holding that space of compassion for others to be who they are, because it looks different for everybody, we actually need to understand that by accepting something to be what it is, we are not condoning its behavior. We are simply saying, I cannot change you through my efforts. Your change lies in your hands. I can only accept that you are where you are and hold space for you to move on, to do what you need to do. And this in itself is a very subtle and powerful lesson, one that will be very useful for people who are working through codependency and relationship dynamics in which one person has to sacrifice for another. A very special mention also has to be made for people who are also trying to beat addictions. This is a time where addictions can come back full swing. So you need to make sure that you are in a safe space if you feel these cravings coming up. Because this is a time where a lot of forces, internal and external, are trying to keep you down. So it's probably a good idea not to let them. Again, the exact prescription differs for everybody, but I can just give you a general sense of what's happening. What I would also say is, last but not least, this is a time for us to, as we are releasing the old, as we are celebrating the possibilities of the new energy coming in, we also need to give ourselves some room for tears, some room for grief, and that's a big deal. Because everything has a process. There is this liminal space between death and rebirth, and that is the space that we are occupying, and this is why our grief process needs to be honored. And today I found myself thinking about something, and I know this video is a little longer than others, but you know what, deal with it. I found myself thinking about a story, actually an encounter that I had in when I visited East Malaysia, a state called Sarawak. And I went to see this cave with my brother and our guide, who wasn't very good at being a guide. He was this Chinese man, and he was telling us a story of something else that we passed by. We had gotten out of the cave, and I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I saw a signboard for this lake called Tasik Biru, which means blue lake. So I asked him, what's this? And then I realized why this man was sent to us. And turns out that there's a story associated with that place. The lake itself is this beautiful blue color. You know, it's the blue color that we associated others with, you know, whether it's Atlantis, Lemuria, other civilizations. It's that magical, beautiful blue. And you would think it's wonderful. But when I went there, I thought the energy was something very eerie, something's wrong here. And then the man told us the story. Turns out, a couple of decades ago, there was the school bus full of children, and the driver saw another car coming straight at him from the opposite direction, and something went wrong, and the entire bus just, you know, toppled over sideways, and the children fell into the water, and they all died, except for the driver. And he got roundly chased out, of course, because, you know, there was just no way the community could bear the weight of what had happened. And the person who was guiding us that day was a teacher at that school, so he knew the story. So when I went there, I remember praying. I remember just praying for the souls of the departed. And it has nothing to do with me. I mean, it's none of my lifetimes. I was already alive when it happened. But something about it just always made me feel like something needed to be done. There wasn't a marker, there wasn't a stone, there wasn't anything that really said children had died here. A tragedy had taken place. And, you know, I've always been telling myself since, if ever I had the funds to do so, I would want to build something there, even if it was a small memorial, anything, just to say something had happened. And I found myself thinking about that today, looking at dynamics in my own family that have come up. And it just feels to me that it's a message that I needed to share with everyone. What is passing? What is releasing? Take the time to build it a little memorial. Put a little flowers on its grave, or however you define it. And then allow yourself to embrace in the new memories. Because everything has existed for a reason and for a purpose, even if that purpose is not something we can understand. And I'm not saying everything happens for the greatest reason. I find that people need to make things meaningful. But in any case, I don't know why that incident happened. I don't know why that moved me so much, but it did. And I don't know why I'm sharing it with you today. It's just, I remember that blue lake, and I think that something should have been done. Even if it was a little signboard that said, this is what happened. So take the time to grieve. Take the time to make that little signboard for yourself. What you survived, what you endured. You don't need to hold on to the story, but a little memorial in your heart will do. And then prepare to move on. And that's what we're going to be seeing with the energy of Chiron in Aries coming at us in just a few days' time. So take care. Lots of love to everyone. Be who you are. Try to be compassionate when you can. And remember, you do not need to define your spirituality in terms of how deeply you suffer. There are other ways of doing it, and that is the age that we are entering. We can serve spirit from a heart that is full and not hollowed out. Take care and lots of love. Bye-bye.